So Mary was born in Honolulu. You can ask her about that. She grew up in Big Stone Gap. If anyone from Virginia knows where that is. And she loves old classic movies. So feel free to join Mary after this. And Mary's going to take over now. And we're going to
move these
the
two
chairs real quick.
characters over
Yeah.
there.
And everyone enjoy the panel.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones. You're such a good one. All right. So I have my list of names that I'm going to read. We're going to start first. I'm going to go by who I have on the list first. Okay. We have Alex Walsh, CEO of Breaking Tea, which is a real-time fan gear company, and it's powered by social data analytics. And before I forget, is this not great with Danielle Akers and Laura Townsend put together? They brought this star cast. This is better than an old Hollywood movie. Okay, then we have Ernisha, who is the president and CEO of the Virginia Black Chamber of Commerce. We have cousin Chris DeMay. He's not really my cousin, but I feel like he is. He's the founder and chief operating officer of Trust Point, and they're hiring, so keep your radar up. Okay, then we have the wonderful Rishi Jaitley, who is a professor over at Virginia Tech. And we'll get him to work in what he's doing after the significant career he's had in Silicon Valley and in venture capital. We have, wait, I gotta make sure I'm going, Danielle's probably next. Somebody on here had a really long bio. So I'm gonna skip through that. Danielle Sands. Danielle is Women in AI. She's a founder and she's a marketing expert. So that's going to be good for after the launch conversation. And then we have Dr. Sabria Stoops. Thank you. Who is a partner in a venture capital firm called SOSB. So why am I doing this? Yes, I'm over at the Virginia Tech Foundation, which is the holder of this subsidiary, which is this beautiful park that Brett has led for 4 years, the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. And we work very closely together. And as time marches on, we'll be doing more and more together here between the CRC and the foundation. The other reason I'm here, though, is I spent 2 decades in Silicon Valley myself. On the side that's probably more like what you've been doing, Danielle, with the marketing and also, you know, positioning strategy, that sort of thing, working with startups. So that's how I got picked to walk you through this wonderful cast here. So in prepping, I talked to a couple of people. One of them is Brandy Salmon, that many of you might know, who is in innovation and partnerships over at the university. And we linked license launch. And I told her we were going to be talking about launch after the launch. And what she said to me is that's when the work begins. So you might think that, we all might think that the hardest part is the idea, funding it, organizing it, but a lot of people feel that what we're talking about today is where the rubber hits the road. So Alex, I want to start with you. Oh, thanks. Thanks for that.
There you go.
Alex, I was just gonna pace, but this is good. No, I know. This too. Alex, what do you think about that aspect of work with this company, with the company you've started? Do you agree with that? Was it easiest to think of the idea?
That's a very good question, and you're kind of speaking in terms of what after.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, our business is interesting in that we have built this analytics platform to look at what sports fans are engaging with in real time based on social media data. And the platform was a ton of fun to build, but the behind the scenes logistical aspects of our business has been a huge challenge, including with like NIL in the past couple of years. So we started in professional sports and now we have, we brought our business to collegiate sports. And now that, student athletes can commercialize their likeness, we are working with thousands of athletes. And so the logistical challenges of, we're looking for big moments in sports and commemorating these great moments that these fan bases are celebrating, right? And so I would just say like, yeah, post-launch, just all of the logistical, like most of my time, I would say, is spent on the back end, helping, all of these processes that have to happen behind the scenes. And it's a lot of trial by error. I was an engineer by trade, Virginia Tech. And like I said, building the platform and creating this thing was awesome. But then just trial by error, actually getting the logistical out to all over the country.
Two questions, and we're gonna do more of a conversation, you guys, and also obviously make time for your questions too. Were you surprised? Were you ready for the NIL thing? Did you have to kind of really?
I think our business was kind of set up for it in that we were doing it with Major League Baseball players and NFL players. So the model was kind of set up. But if you had followed kind of the legislation and seeing what was going to happen with NCAA, California kind of led the charge. But then like what seemingly almost instantly, there was this legislation, and I believe it was July 1st, 2021. And we kind of knew like maybe 2 or 3 days before that, that it was about to happen. And so I was actually talking with Chris about this earlier this morning. Like the first year of NIL was us on the phone with athletes' parents and family members, like after dinner, trying to figure out how this is all going to work. And it was, I mean, for the first 12 months, it was the absolute wild, wild west. Like we didn't really know what we were doing. And so it was a lot of just like on the job training, learning as we go along.
Well, so the other question I have for you, which we're then going to pull Ernisha into this question, is as an engineer, what did you have to do on that back end to kind of build out the business side? And Ernisha, where we're going with you at that point is from your perch in the Chamber of Commerce, what, pivot onto what, I'd love for you to add something to what how Alex answered.
Yeah, I mean, just from an engineering perspective, and I always give a shout out to BTISE. I mean, the industrial and systems engineering, like that's the logistical backend, is building out processes and systems, and even kind of using like some simulation methods to see, what's the best way to facilitate all of these actions that have to happen in order for us to get a product to market. So that the analytics engine was like the fun thing to develop, but the meat of the business was building out these automated systems and processes. Otherwise, it would never happen for us.
So after you get that structural element, which is what makes the product hit the market, right?
Yep.
How do you find the people to work with? Do you go to something like a Chamber of Commerce that Ernisha runs, or is it a network, or, and Chris, I'd love you to weigh on this after Ernisha.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we have, where we have leveraged resources like this to find the team, and we've grown to a team of about 20 employees full time, and then another 10 to 20 contracted employees, kind of depending on the season. So yeah, I mean,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Ernisha, are you seeing that kind of combo of contracting and full time from where you are within a company of this size and nature?
So for us, it's a little bit different. Our Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
So a lot of the people who we work with are volunteers, and interns, paid interns from colleges and universities.
I see.
Our staff that we have, sometimes they'll come from the community, typically, but touching on what he said, it's about creating systems and processes in the back end.
Gotcha.
That's going to create a flow of information to our members. We have over 1,000 members. And so when we first started, when you said it was Wild Wild West
Yeah.
and trial and error, I'll tell you, it absolutely was. We started off with one CRM system that we thought was, like, oh, this is gonna be great, only to find out it was absolutely not great. But then you have everyone in that system, and now you have to get them to the new system. But that's not even the end of it, because, yeah, okay, now the team gets them to the new system, but then you have to get those people onboarded to the new system. So it definitely, when you have a business, finding out which softwares and processes work best for your company, that's one of the, I think, one of the hardest parts in the early stages.
That you've done that now, what's the one, two or three things that you would tell folks that are gonna have to do what you did?
Automations. Find what software offers project management and automation.
Okay,
So that way, when you are working on something, everyone on the team knows what they need to work on and is held accountable for that. Email is not the way. Email is not your friend when you're building a business, because you have the clients and the customers and the stakeholders and the strategic partners all in your email box. But then you have your team in your email box. So how do you separate those conversations? I've actually grown to love Slack. Slack allows you to have that ongoing DM type of conversation with individual team members, but also you can have a group channel that is related to a specific project and have ongoing conversations there. So it's about finding which systems work best for your organization.
that's the tailoring part of it. Chris, how do you feel about this? Are you guys approaching, or did you face a similar challenge? Are you in the middle of it? Do you have a war story you can share on this battle?
Sure, why not? Well, listen, when you're starting a company, like a lot of things have to align, and many of them are in your control and maybe more of them are not in your control. And as a small business, every decision you make is steering the ship so quickly and dramatically in positive or terrible ways. So like having the right people from the get-go is so important. I have founded a company in the past with co-founders who were not full-time committed. And I've also founded a company with somebody who was full-time committed with me. Having somebody who is on board and has the same vision as you and is somebody you know and trust is absolutely like the first step to making the right decisions that are going to help the business take off. I'd say figuring that out first is absolutely the most important thing for a business. And if that aligns with an opportunity, meaning somebody who has a problem and a technology that you can marry together with the right team. That's what's worked in the past.
It's like a good cocktail, isn't it?
It really
Can you
is.
tell what I'm thinking about? So Chris, a friend of mine started a company called Bridgeify. You guys might have heard of it. It's a way to communicate when wireless is down. And I asked him, I want to read to you what he wrote to me because it really resonates. And then Danielle, we're kicking this over to you because I want to hear what you think of this too. Jorge Rios said, surround yourself with people who are not only brilliant and believe in the mission, but that you could actually, this is a good one, you could actually see yourself working with for 10 years.
Awesome.
I love
Is that, do you guys, okay. The best teams are built on a foundation of passion and shared goals, but long-term relationships should be based on trust, empathy, and simply liking one another. Do you agree with the liking one another?
New businesses are so complicated. New businesses are so complicated that you don't need additional drama. You don't need additional complexity, right? Like if you don't have that foundation in place, the other stuff's built on super shaky ground. So spot on.
Kind of like marriage. What do you think, Danielle? Do you agree with that?
If you research Zappos technically has an onboarding process for the employees that's similar to that. And after a certain period of time, when there's a new employee, they would offer them $1,000 or $2,000 to leave if they don't love working with them.
Wow.
So they are huge on culture because they understand that you can have one cancerous person and it can So when you own a business, and I've owned about 4 of them,
Mhm.
you do have to analyze and really weed out any biases, because they can take your entire business down. And when you have good people, treat them like partners. I don't care if they're from a janitor to an administrator. You have to treat I'm from the Bahamas, and we believe in you treat everyone equally and the same. And so once you're taking care of them, they will take care of you and your business.
Danielle, in that, you know, most people on the planet are good, just because it's not working out in that situation doesn't mean they're bad, but how do you kind of, I'm gonna open it, I want you to start, but open it up to everybody, and particularly right now, Sabria, with the venture capital end, because I think venture capitalists look at team really closely. But Danielle, how do you nip something in the bud that's not working in a way that leaves everybody feeling whole?
I think you make sure you have done everything possible to make it work. And then you use data. I mean, we have analysis that you can do to really check the data and compare the data. So you use a logical approach, but then you also want to do a practical approach. And then when it's done, just kind of let it die out effectively. Because if not, you're going to put a lot of time and energy, and time is money, into something that is just proven to not work for you. And you can also check your competitors. And if they have that same structure implemented and it's working for them, maybe analyze what it is that you need to do to improve your system.
That competitor thing, so when I was in Silicon Valley, that, on a lot of pitch decks, you want to show the strength of a market, and you want to show that you have looked at the players. I would always, if I was working with a company, I'd say, call it players and not so much competitors, right? So Sabria, what do you think about that? And when you're looking to invest in a company, do you do that team construct, the comparison from player to player, or is that not that big a deal?
We definitely want to make investments in companies where there's a big market opportunity and that there is some other players in competition. I would say, to go back to the team discussion that we're all having, is that so we invest pre-seed, early stage. So a lot of times the team and the technology is all we have to go on. And sometimes the technology isn't even really there, because again, you know, these are founders and scientists or engineers coming to us and saying, you know, we have some breakthrough technology. We think that there's a company there. So the team is critically important, especially at the earliest stages. I think one thing that maybe was not mentioned in that quote was, sure, you know, like your founder, whatever, but I also think it's also about respect, right? Like, you should be able to disagree with your co-founder in a respectful way, as long as at the end of the day, the goal is to, you know, kind of move the company forward. I think one thing that I will say that was mentioned on there as well is that I think it is really hard to course correct as your team gets bigger, as your company gets bigger, in terms of the culture, in terms of kind of how everyone is working together. So if you are able to set that precedence early on, with a small enough team, people that you are bringing in will see, like, this is the culture, this is what they expect of me, and kind of emulate that as well. One thing I wanted to mention, since this is kind of about launching companies and kind of what to expect after that launch, is that I do think that there is this false narrative, or especially at the early stage of companies, that you only will launch one time, right? That, like, once you hit press on the website, once you kind of maybe potentially have a press release, you're like, okay, I've launched the company. But the reality is you will launch the company many times over, you know, the trajectory of your company, whether that's deciding what kind of CRM systems to use, whether that's changing your website. I think that at the earliest stage, where I have seen founders struggle is that they want everything to be perfect before they put it out into the world. But what we have seen most of the successful founders do is just put it out there so that they get the feedback from their customers, from investors, from partners, from other organizations, and then take that feedback and quickly iterate and then launch again. So I think, yes, maybe there is this one big launch, right? The ticker tape parade, confetti falls. But the reality is you will do tiny little launches, and the faster and the quicker you can get those done, at least for investors at the later stage, they see, okay, this team can move quickly. they can move efficiently, but then they can also take the money that we're giving them and, kind of hit those inflection milestones, so that we know that our money is
Would
being
you,
put to good use.
would you say that launch is then a mindset kind of to never let go? Or how do you get to that state of mind that you're describing?
I think it's a muscle that you just have to strengthen. I am a scientist by training. So I totally get I need the data to look perfect before anyone sees it or critiques it.
Yeah,
But I think that can sometimes put founders at a disadvantage because other people are out there launching, other people are out there putting, so you don't want to wait too long until it's perfect. I might be mucking up this phrase, but when I was doing some work over the pandemic with some folks who were trying to get masks and gloves to the people that need them, we would use this phrase, good enough for now, safe enough to try. And that would mean, as long as it wasn't like truly harming people, we would try new things with how we were going to be working with other teams or other people. And so I think for me, that little mantra kind of took the pressure off of it needing to be
Yes.
perfect.
somebody said to me recently, don't let the perfect, what is?
And don't let,
Good.
yeah,
Yes,
sorry, I feel like we were all repeating
Yeah.
it, so can you just say
no,
it?
this is great. Yeah, say it, Rishi.
Don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good.
Yeah. Become the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
That's sort of like Marvel comics. Okay, so Rishi, this is perfect.
Hey, yeah, we
Because
didn't
we
script
just
that.
teed you up.
Yeah, we did.
So, what do you think about that? I mean, you're teaching now, but you were at the right hand of a Blacksburg native at Google. Eric Schmidt grew up in Blacksburg. Did you guys know that? I just found that out. Like, I tell everybody that now. Eric Schmidt grew up in Blacksburg. But you worked at his right hand, and then you've done venture capital, like Sabria. And now you're over at the great university across the duck pond. What do you think when you hear all of this? And now after we hear from you a little bit, we're gonna open this up for conversation.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mary, for your leaned in approach to moderating, and great to be with you guys. Man, I have like an all of the above take on a lot
do?
of the
Go.
conversation. Where to start? I guess I'd start by kind of like reframing a little bit of how I think about entrepreneurship and career.
Okay,
I tend to think of calling, not career, evangelism, not entrepreneurship. I tend to believe that those entrepreneurs and executives that frame their businesses as callings with depth of conviction, see their mission as entrepreneurs as that of evangelists, tend to lead and win and impress and fundraise and sell and inspire teams in ways that we often don't appreciate the importance of. So I kind of start there, just sort of the importance of feeling almost soulful about one's entrepreneurship efforts. And I know, when I started my venture business 8 years ago, it was a quirky niche business, but it felt like a calling. I know when I started the school at Virginia Tech, it felt like that. All my prior startups have felt like that. So that's big picture. The second reflection I have is, on some level, your opening question was really interesting around ideas. So on some level, we live in an era where, it seems like everybody's got an idea. Everybody's, speaking for me and my wife, we've got God knows how many domain names we've bought over the last 20 years. All that. And so on some level, we're always entrepreneuring because ideas hit us and we say, well, is the domain available? Things like that. But on the other hand, I don't think we ought to leave to chance this feeling that entrepreneurship is within the reach of everybody. And so that's where, to me, kind of the humanities, which is a side passion of mine, shows up. Because, when you live in the humanities, you live in kind of constant question asking mode. And so yes, we live in an era where ideas are everywhere. But still, gosh, it'd be amazing if more people felt like they live on planet idea the way maybe all of us here do. I also, point 3, do believe, like you implied in your question, that execution is critical. I remember when I was at Google and Twitter, we were very afraid of Facebook and their ability to quickly move on ideas. And I remember a mentor of mine at Google saying, dude, they undoubtedly have the same idea we have, but they will not execute the way we do. Or we will. And so to me,
you know, on some level, ideas are a commodity, right? Everything I've ever started, I imagine someone else has had the idea before, right? And there's that line from the movie Social Network where Mark Zuckerberg says, if you would have started Facebook, if you started Facebook, you would have started Facebook. So, you know, you kind of believe a little bit of that too. A fourth reflection I have, just, you know, you brought up Eric. One of the things that Eric once told me, early on at Google was, you know, he was CEO of Google, cover of Time magazine, you know, this was when Google was entering the public's consciousness. And he told me a couple things that have stayed with me, many things, but two I'll mention right now. One was, you know, Rishi, what they don't tell you about being chairman and CEO of Google, not, you know, all the bells and whistles notwithstanding, is you still got to run the Tuesday weekly HR meeting. You still got to run the, you know, Wednesday product review. Meaning,
Alex, I love your face right now.
he was, he and many of my mentors have mentioned over the years that bells and whistles, shine notwithstanding, I run the Tuesday HR meeting. And for me, that was an important lesson that no matter how highfalutin and cool we feel about our titles and, you know, the impressions of our LinkedIn posts and the awards and stages we sit on entrepreneurs, there's perspiration. And the final thing I'll say, just for purposes of this conversation, two more things real quick. One is, the other thing he said to me was velocity. I have found that the most responsive people I have ever come across in my career have been the most successful. Meaning, I have found the more successful you are, the speedier you are. And the word he used for me was velocity. He says, my job as CEO is velocity. I keep things moving, don't let things bottle up. Last thing I'll say that I'm done is one of the things I've thought about often as a venture capitalist and certainly as an entrepreneur and boards I've sat on, a tough, challenging question I've asked founders often is the hit by bus question. What changes if all of us, or if this company's hit by a bus? What changes if it's not for profit? What changes in the marketplace, so to speak? And to me, it's a tough question. It's a question that is hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to. It's hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to confront.
Right,
because we want to
right,
believe
right.
we're essential. But when you anchor in what happens if my company's hit by a bus, it actually sharpens your value proposition and compels you to aim at what's essential. And I found that to be a really helpful forcing function as a board member, investor, advisor, to get companies to get really, really clear, really, really quickly. I'll stop there.
No, this is great. Do you guys feel that that's on to this last point? I mean, Ernisha, when you were talking about the things you discovered just about daily organization or running the HR meeting, you know, I mean, everything you guys have said has been, to me, I think of it as urgency too.
Yep.
Like if you, it's always to have a sense of, now you could drive yourself crazy and as well as the people around you if you're urgent all the time. But how do you guys deal with that? Where, you know, Alex, I want to come back to you. How do you, like, if you see somebody kind of like, okay, relaxing too much? Or maybe you don't have that at your.
Well, I think our business is unique. Every business is unique, but we kind of operate like a newsroom where sports are constantly happening. And our analytics engine is like constantly running, analyzing millions of social posts, feeding our team with insights. And then we have to turn that into products and get those products shipped all over. And a lot of sports happens nights and weekends, during holidays, things like that. So, you know, each year we define, our company goals for the year. And then those company goals filter down to department level goals. So I've got a kind of core leadership team of 5-ish people. And those 5 people define their department goals and they all align up into the company goals. And, you know, our mission is to serve sports fans and our differentiation is speed. So our business is speed and speed can kind of never sleep. And so we are an always on 24/7 business. Now that runs in direct opposition with work-life balance. So when we're defining our company goals, we're defining like meeting the mission and being the fastest in the industry. But the goal right alongside that is to develop a work-life balance where our people can thrive. And we become like the best place to work in our industry. And we're a small disruptor player, but we have, we have employees coming from Nike and Under Armour, seeing what we're starting to do and saying, hey, I want to go work there. And it's very hard because there's always a deadline with our business. Literally every day is like the Super Bowl because something big just happened. And someone may need to do something literally in the middle of the night. So we try to balance that with like, how do we, back to the systems, like how do we enable systems where people don't have to be always on and there's.
Or that it's not all on one person all the
That's
time.
right. Yeah. So we talk about continuity of service. So if our director of operations wants to go on vacation or even just wants to go volunteer at her kid's school for the entire day, like what have we set up with our systems and with redundancy so that our people can go. But that's the other thing, like we're fully remote and it's a very flex type of business with what I've described with the speed. And so it does enable people to go be with their families at like traditional business hours, for example.
That's so very different from the companies that dominated the 20th
Yeah.
century around the world, but especially in the United States, right? People worry about remote work. To your point, I think that goes to what kind of company you have and how much people need to be sitting next to one another
Yeah.
day by day.
I'll say one other thing, going back to what you were speaking about with the teams and the culture. We're a small but quickly growing company and culture is obviously very important. And we've had pretty much near zero attrition because we do take the time to try to hire the right folks. But I'll just tell one quick story. Maybe it will be useful to you someday. I think employee number 5, at some point we realized there was, a great person who I still believe is a great person, but there were fundamental differences in this person's belief about where the company should go. And we were continually like hitting these roadblocks, not just with me, but all the other people there. And so I had to let this person go.
That must have been hard.
It was very, very difficult. And the other wrinkle was that this person, early employee number 5 had an interest in the business. Like we offered equity as part of the package. And when we had to make the decision to let this person go, there was a lot of unvested. And I had been on the other side of that table before when I decided to go do something else. And so what we ultimately decided to do was probably not the best financial decision, but we allowed like a big chunk of that unvested to just vest. Like, thank you, person, for helping us grow to where we've gotten. We are now going to go on separate paths. But we gave this person a bunch of unvested. And now they're advocating for the company. Like they were there for that tiny part.
That's
And now we're growing and, maybe I would love to write this person a nice check in the future, but we had to like, to your point, like once we realized we had to go separate ways.
which left everybody, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love your emphasis on culture, and I think that it's often underappreciated as well, certainly early in my career. Smart people, when they hear that this notion that culture matters, they think, that sounds very pixie dusty, airy fairy, but this invisible force that is culture is such a driver of behavior in companies, organizations, places, universities, families, everywhere. And so being intentional about culture setting, because people end up living into the stories you tell. This story you've just told is a story your teams now live into. And so, there's a much longer conversation about how to create culture, but I have learned often the hard way. And presently I'm an advisor to OpenAI, and I'm experiencing their culture sort of as a post-COVID fully virtual company. And one of the things I'm observing is just sort of the challenge of cultivating culture in a company birthed post-COVID on Zoom. And it's much harder now than companies birthed in the 2010s and beforehand.
What do you got, what is making it harder?
Well, I think, I mean, I'd be curious, those of you that run remote teams, but certainly, you know, running a
The remote
remote
thing.
operation, but still. There are ways, particularly if you're founder or CEO, to set a tone of persona, authenticity, you know, whatever the culture of the company is. And people mimic behavior in ways that have often surprised me, so.
Google, don't be evil, right? I used to, on my website years ago, I had don't be sneaky. That was, you know, I think that's such an interesting thing, because sometimes, you know, you don't want to be negative, but sometimes you have to say, we're not gonna be that either. Chris, you guys you're working, you've got, your CEO's in Mountain View.
Yep.
And you're in Northern Virginia.
Yep, yep. So
Right.
the two founders are on each coast. We founded the company in January of 2020, which was a super interesting time to start a company.
Wow.
We didn't see each other in person for a couple of years, but in that time, we raised money, we hired people, we got government contracts, we executed on those contracts. But as a company, we're building a constellation of small satellites, so there's hardware involved, right?
Oh,
I can't create a spacecraft dev board for everybody to have at their house. So that should be like a centralized place where everyone's coming together. So we're working through that. Alex and I were talking about this over coffee, and you know, one of the challenges is that we are neither fully remote or fully in person. And moreover, we have most of our folks in Northern Virginia. We have a team that sees each other in person. And then we've got a handful of folks who dial in for the meetings, but they're not there for the team lunches, and they're not there for, you know, the chat around the water cooler, right? So, I mean, I think we've made it work. People who have elected to be remote, we've hired because they are exceptionally independent and they identify work that needs to be done, allowing, in a very small team, allowing the leadership rather than the leadership managing them. They're clearing the way for them. Like my job, like my primary role is to do the things that allow my talented engineers to focus on the work and make their job as easy as possible.
so you kind of snowplow stuff they don't
Yes.
need to worry about.
Absolutely. I clear the
That's
path.
a cultural marker, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Sabria?
Yeah, sorry, I was just like vigorously yes to everything that's being said, really, because again, we work with founders at the earliest stages of their company development, and usually it is just two founders figuring stuff out together. I think that one of the things, and many of them are either scientists or engineers, so we work across human and planetary health, so everything from therapeutics to robotics to climate tech, but the thing that I feel like I have conversations a lot with scientists and engineers, let's say, is they actually don't know what being a CEO means, really. They, to what you were saying is, you can read these articles and you can see these images on Time magazine, but they don't also realize that, oh yeah, being a CEO means having difficult conversations. It means doing the things that nobody else wants to do. And so I think that, again, I don't know if I have anything else to really add or
No,
support here,
that's
but just
great.
continue to say that, when you launch your company or when you are deciding the roles and like kind of what you want to do and how you want to move the company forward, realizing that if you're going to put yourself at that top role,
There's
CEO.
things it's not just the shot on the Time magazine.
Exactly. And some of those things might be very difficult in terms of firing people, in terms of having difficult conversations with other members where the culture isn't being respected because it isn't something that just happens. Just because you put people together in a room,
Right.
is something that, needs to be worked on, pretty
consistently. I hope you're thinking about how you're going to enter this conversation in a couple of minutes. I want to cover kind of one more topic, and that's customers. And Danielle, I'd like to start with you on that, because of your marketing chops. And you're doing AI, right? So, are you thinking that that the art of communication and the art of market positioning can be, how do we use AI in that? How do we do that? Or do we keep doing marketing and business development the same way it's been done traditionally?
AI is going to help with the automation of marketing. It's also assisting with the ideation process. So you can basically use tools like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity. And you tell it exactly what you're needing as far as a marketing plan. I did a whole marketing plan I work at FSU. I did a whole marketing plan for 5 different departments in about an hour. You know, so I think it can assist. We have to treat it like an assistant for ideas and then use our expertise to pad the ideas that it gives us. Now, I'm not a huge fan of automated responses in social media. I think that
Makes
makes it
sense.
too hands-off, and Anisha talks about following up at least 8 times in
Yes.
person with people. So I think we have to
Follow-up is key,
follow up with.
right, Megan? Megan works with me. She hears me talking about follow-up all the time, so she's ready to go like, get away.
It's worth finding out which tools and systems, Salesforce, CRM systems will maximize your productivity, increase your efficiency, and allow for a better work-life balance. And that takes research and it takes time, but it's worth it.
At kind of at the front end. Are you doing any AI, Arnisha? Are you using, you are? And it's not been too much to manage?
I don't use AI in any automated responses. I use it in creating ideas
Research.
or, yeah, research, also expanding on ideas. The AI platform that I like is Jasper. So, I find that a lot of people haven't heard of Jasper, and
But I haven't used it.
I absolutely love it, but it is only as, and that's probably with ChatGPT and all the other platforms, it's only as good as the information that you put into it. So I stress with our team, and even with business owners, when we're talking about their business plan, I stress to them that you're going to put in as much of you into that as possible. On Jasper, you actually can upload, like, let's say you want to upload your mission, vision, and any statistics or anything, any information about your company you want. You can upload it as, I believe, a PDF. And so now when you're coming and you're creating ideas or business plans or proposals, you can choose a tone. And so you click on it and it says, speak in this tone. So I have 2 tones, 2 personalities in my AI. And it pulls from that.
Wow,
And so that's how I use AI.
I want one that has angry.
You can say that, you can say, answer this in an angry, assertive way, right?
Assertive. It's much better, Sabrina. What?
Well, one thing I just wanted to say about customers, and again, just kind of the experience that I have with the founders of the earliest stages is first also really knowing who your customer is, because there's going to be people who use your product. Maybe they might not pay for it directly. There might be people who are impacted by your product, but don't pay for it at all. And then there are going to be people who actually exchange money for the goods. So really understanding the different kind of buckets of the people who will, like I say, either be impacted by your product or need to buy your product. At the earliest stage, I think, is something that we work with our founders really closely on, because especially in life science and biotech, who you think is going to be buying your product is actually not the person that's going to be buying it.
That understanding, customer profiling has been around forever, but about 10 years ago, I used to take a bus service called Ride Pal from San Francisco down to it doesn't exist any longer, down to San Jose. And I was at an industry event and a guy walks up to me and says, I know you. And I said, how have we met? He goes, your picture is on the wall. They downloaded it from LinkedIn or something. Yeah, but they were hammering, you've got to know our customers and our users. And I had written them with a question about something, and they wrote me back and talked to me and kept, they kept the conversation going to the point where they wanted, and this was engineering, guy was an engineer. And I just thought that was just super, because, lots of times you're gonna have employees that never shake the hand of the customer. But to your
Well,
point,
I was only raising that in the context of responses, and I appreciate neither of you automate responses and things like that, but whether you're creating templates or whether you're creating kind of easy ways for you to reach out to whoever is going to be using your product, making sure you know who they are so that you are tailoring your responses to that. And maybe one quick anecdote I'll give just for me is that I get a lot of decks from founders. And they will say, oh, Sabria, I see that you're really interested in SaaS. And I'm like, we've never invested in a SaaS company in our entire career.
So they didn't do the homework.
Well, it's very clear that it's an automated reach out. And somehow because I'm either on a list of just early stage, so I guess again, just doing just like a little bit of research really can save, not, I would say embarrassment, because like obviously these founders don't know that I'm not reading this, but again, just I can't tell you how, especially again, at the earliest stages, a little bit of thought, care before applying some more automated AI utilities, which I think are great and are a tool, I think can really position you and help you stand out.
Well, see, this is what's so cool about what Virginia Tech has done in attracting Rishi here to do this program that integrates technology and the humanities. That's a really, really great, what is that, a 9-month or 12 month?
Yeah, 9 to 12. Yeah.
9 to 12. And this is where I want to pull you guys in with any questions that you have, because of this aspect of we love our technology, and probably in this room, we really, really love it. But how do we keep it relevant to the daily human experience and then propel things forward is I think where we have to think. You have a question?
Yeah,
Comment?
we're touching on voice of customer.
Yes.
And how a startup interacts with their potential clients. I'd be interested in hearing how you recommend startups interact with their customers.
Jump in, other than putting their picture on the wall, scaring them to death.
I mean, I think at the onset, it's just remember that your customer is a person and you have a product or a tool that is going to solve some problem they have. But also making sure it's a problem that your customer really has, so again, I think it is as easy, or it could be a first step as simple as, I would love to talk to you about this problem you might have. I think, maybe not leading them on to then say it doesn't have to turn into a sales pitch. It could just be like, I think I might have something, that could be helpful, but again, would open it up for folks who have done a little bit more customer discovery, but again, it's just at the onset, remembering that your customer is a person.
Well,
And you can tell, you can tell that as a venture capitalist, right? When they're not.
It's just very clear when a founder comes to me and says, I have this problem, I have a solution for a problem, but they have not spoken to one single person who could potentially be their customer. Because it's just very clear, and whether it's because of the market opportunity they have, because of, but I'm happy to chat more about that, but
Thank you.
I know we
Go
should.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, your question gets at this sort of larger issue of, we live in an enormously cluttered world. And now we've got an AI ascendant world where a lot of the clutter is increasingly less human. And so in that world, it's humanity that actually breaks through the clutter. And so it's part of why I came to Virginia Tech. And as Mary noted, I founded what I think is the country's first executive degree in the humanities, where mid-career professionals from around the world come to Virginia Tech to study history, philosophy, creative writing, religion, literature, as a way to heighten their humanity, because they know their ability to close a sales deal or contemplate a new market to enter or self-advocate for a promotion don't hinge any longer on their ability to perfect a spreadsheet or nail a piece of code written in Python. It comes from something else. It comes from breaking through the slog of emails we're getting that seem less and less human, coming across as sincere, curious, spirited, vulnerable, introspective, imaginative, and attentive. And so then the question is, where do those muscles come from? And so that's in part why I'm here. And I think when you do that, it's way more than half the battle. We've all experienced from customers. We've all experienced being customers. And we know that even if the answer is not what we want, we know how grateful we are when there's a human touch. And so I've certainly found that in any time I've ever closed a deal as an entrepreneur, any sort of deal with a customer, it's not been because I have the best product. It's because I came with far more purpose and passion, perhaps, than my competitor.
Thank you. You had a question?
My question was like, if we go entirely AI for everything, and you are in an industry and you're using the same tools. I mean, I'm envisioning it that the message, the approach, if we are blinded only to AI, it would be the same. It doesn't matter where it came from. If you don't do, I mean, I'm in licensing, so I always think about the 70% template. Okay, I want something that would help me, but I also have to be able to make it unique. So what are your thoughts about, where is the sweet spot that you don't want to, that doesn't, every university sound the same because they use the same tool.
That's right.
Not Virginia Tech, Alex.
Yeah, but, you know what I'm saying?
You were in my session this morning,
Yeah.
but I was sharing this morning how we have started to use Gen AI. We use it for rapid prototyping for product development.
Sure.
And we use it also for rapid development of marketing, like targeted marketing communications. But it's still like the 80-90% get it there and then have the humans finish.
Yeah.
But I will say, just another story on like how people can influence culture. And so we hired a woman early on to be our customer experience manager. And we're selling products to consumers. So we have like a very active like customer support hotline. And, coming from engineering and like Six Sigma kind of mindset, if I'm looking at our dashboards and seeing like, 99.5% of our deliveries were on time and customer satisfaction. Rachel, who runs our customer service, she's like, what about the 0.5? That's like
Right.
300 people that might be very upset.
Right.
And so we absolutely have not automated anything on the customer service. And if I do, Rachel will kill me. Maybe at some. Yeah, exactly. But she she has a small team now, including some interns. So the cost is not that great. But literally every customer service request that comes into our business is responded to by a human. And I'd like to see how, when you're starting a business, like you think about, you want to do things that can scale. But I think what I've learned and seen is like, you also want to do some things that don't scale and see, kind of where you want to focus your efforts.
That's really.
That's fascinating. You had a question, sir?
So, thank you guys for being here. It's been very enlightening. I had a question, sort of, it's about after launch. You guys have spoken a little bit about hiring, firing, but also one of the big things that happens after launch is pivot points. And so I'm wondering, I think that probably recently, some of the others will have discussions or points about how did you like be the pivot point? How did you know, how did you confirm that that was a pivot point? Like how much time did you give yourself, or your team to figure out that we needed to pivot? And then how did it go? Did it work out? Did it not work out? I think that's one of the big problems with being a founder and having tunnel vision. I love my product. I love my technology. I need my technology to be used this way. And I don't want somebody else to use it in a different way.
Yeah, sure. So when it's suggested that you reach out to your customers and get their feedback, it's not to check a box for a pitch deck, right? Like ultimately, the customer's going to drive your success. And at TrustPoint, as we were engaging customers about a commercial alternative to GPS, my hypothesis was people want better accuracy. They want to know where they are more accurately. But in engagement with government customers or commercial customers, it became apparent a couple things. One, just resilience. Knowing that GPS is there was more important to them. So we did a few things. One, we looked at our technology to make sure we were focusing on the thing that our customers wanted, right? Which was a diversion from my first pitch deck, from our first plan, from our first technology approach. And then beyond that, we also heard, hey, GPS is free. I don't want to get a bill from TrustPoint every month. Like, I don't want to be a subscriber to TrustPoint. We're like, cool. We won't send you a bill. We need to figure out a new business model. We reevaluated who the paying customer was if they were different from an end user. So like pivots happen, and reevaluating your own idea of what your business should be throughout is relaunching, right? Like it's happening all the time.
And just think quickly from an investor point of view, the faster you can get to that
Yeah.
decision point and then actually do it, like there's one thing about making a decision and then there's another about doing it, actually doing it. At least from an investor point of view is good because it shows again that you can take feedback that you're getting, internalize it, figure out like these kind of go, no-go decisions and keep moving so that you're not kind of in this like analysis paralysis of like, what should I be doing? It's just like the quicker you get feedback, the quicker you can move. I just want to say, as a scientist, I appreciate you framing it as an experiment because I think again, we're all kind of doing little experiments here and there. And we're getting some information, and that information is just going to help us determine what next experiment.
Danielle, do you agree with that?
I do, I think from a technical perspective, if you're having to pivot, you have to plan it for at least a year. It has to be strategic.
Mhm.
And you also have to implement education for your team and also for your clients. Because sometimes if it's a change that's gonna impact them, that can be negative as well. They're not going to be at the board meetings to say how amazing it is. They're just going to have a change in the output. So you definitely want to plan this thing and walk it through at least a year out. And as you scale, this happens, and a lot of businesses crumble at that point because it's like, how much more money do we spend? How many more experts do we bring in? You know, it's very pivotal to really sit down, hash it out, plan it ahead, and then execute the change.
Just to,
Go ahead, Bruce.
I love that question, and it makes me think about what you were saying earlier about not being obsessive about scale at the front end. You know, I have 3 I's I use when I think about this. So I say it's important to be guided by intuition at the front end, iterate, and then get intellectual later about what you did. I have never had a big pitch deck at the beginning of sort of my entrepreneurial journeys. I've had intuitions, I've had some visuals, and I've iterated. And then after the fact, after I've figured out where this business lands, I've sort of gotten kind of academic about, here's the 25-page deck. I think sometimes we reverse things a little bit. We get overly analytical at the front end and, obsessive about scale and analysis paralysis and miss the spirit of intuition and iteration that I think helps you get to where the sweet spot is.
Go ahead.
I'd also say, because you said how much time throughout the whole journey of your business, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, keep in mind that pivoting will be necessary. It is necessary, and that's why they said customer feedback is just not a box you check. You have to not be afraid to let go of the original idea that you had and allow it to grow into solving the problem of the people who you are serving. So I know for us, we were, if I give time to it, I am the founder of the chamber. Some people don't know that. So we started in January 2020 as a Black Business Directory, the Virginia Black Business Directory. And after 3 years, 1,400 members, we still continue to be in the red. And I know people think, oh, but it's a nonprofit. Nonprofit does not mean no profit. It is a business. Yeah, it doesn't mean no cash flow. It means that it is a business. It is an organization, but it's community-based and centered. That's really the biggest difference, right? And so year 3 hits and we're continuing to see the red and we're like, okay. And I'll be honest, it wasn't me that said we had to pivot. It was the young lady there, Tracy, who is our executive vice president, who said, listen, we might not have a house if we keep going in this direction. And I understand the vision and I'm here for it all. But how can you still meet the needs of these small business owners? What are we doing wrong? What could we be doing differently? And that's when we decided, okay, let's sit down. It was the brand and the name. Realistically, if I walked in this room and I said, I'm the president and CEO of the Virginia Black Business Directory, you're thinking directory, yellow pages, right? You're not going to understand that we're offering services and business accelerator programs, grants and sponsorships and information, access to capital resources. You're not going to understand that this organization is here to assist you in the sustainability of your business. Now I walk in and I say, I'm Renisha Hall, the president and CEO of the Virginia Black Chamber of Commerce. The level of respect is different. The rooms that we are invited into is different. And that was the pivot. The pivot was the name, the brand, even the colors.
Mhm.
We were using black, yellow, and white. And I'm not a sports person, but that was, it gave us sports, right? In research,
Oh, okay.
when you look at government entities that are serving business organizations, blue is a key color in that. So me still wanting to keep yellow because it went back to the yellow pages for me and had to do with my grandmother, the whole family story behind that. It is now yellow, blue, and white.
Mhm.
But it's a lighter, friendlier,
A warmer-
approachable color scheme in the brand. And the name, I want to say one of my greatest achievements is the name got me into the vice president's residence for an event. Because it was a Black leaders event.
Okay.
And I was invited to this event at her home. So I say all of that to say is, don't be so married to the original idea.
Yeah.
Understand that that idea grows from the people that you're serving and from your stakeholders.
And I just want to say as well, don't, your brand and your marketing, don't let that also fall to the wayside, because that also does get you, into rooms. Make sure, you're easy to find on websites, make sure, maybe you are doing a little bit of research about like your logo and color and the like. So I think things that I've seen too is that, some of the founders wait almost, it's a balancing act, right? So again, I just want to reiterate that, especially with that really wonderful anecdote that you want people to know what you do. You also want people to know what you don't do. And a lot of that does come down to how people are finding you and how they are responding to, the marketing and branding you're putting out.
I can say one little practical piece
Sure.
of advice about pivoting, and for us, it was more about going into a different sales channel, which is, I think, is also related to pivoting, but we were kind of a digitally native company born online, selling direct to consumer. Now, the majority of our business is selling to retail, through retailers to the end customer. This is an obvious statement, but when retailers are buying from product from a brand, they're buying at about half the unit cost.
Yeah.
So, the pivot comes along with evaluating the P&L and understanding the economics behind the pivot. And we had to figure out how to handle that.
We have about 5 more minutes. I do have another question, and I want to talk about, the last thing I want to talk about is the question of what constitutes failure. And that is in a positive way. I was talking with another friend of mine from the West Coast last night, and he said, he's known people who labored for 10 years at a company, and they realized that it wasn't doing what the original intent was, or they couldn't pivot. And 9 times out of 10, if they made the decision to close in the circle that he has seen, they've gone on and knocked it out of the park. And I think part of that is it's not a failure to let go of something that you thought was the thing. If you're taking that and plowing it into the next thing. Do any of you feel that way in your own personal experience, that you've ever had to do that? And how do you overcome the fear of it?
So I can just super quickly say, and it's something I already said, which is that, for 10 years, I was a scientist working in a lab. 99% of my experiments didn't work in the way that I wanted them to, but they gave me some results. And so I was able to look at those results and say, well, how can that inform my next decision? So again, I know there's a larger conversation about how to reframe the word failure, or when companies have to shut down. But I think for me, just again, quickly, that being in a lab and spending so many hours like on a microscope doing assays, thinking something's going to work and it not working, I think it just maybe conditioned me a little bit to, when things don't go the way that I wanted them to go, taking away what I needed to then go on and do the next.
To the next. Do you guys agree with that? Have you done that in your lives?
I say, see, instead of calling it failure, take each opportunity that you didn't actually meet your goal and make it a step in front of you. realize that each step is gonna reach you to your highest level of success. So that's another thing.
That is great. What a great note. Do you guys have anything else you want out of your brains that you would like to share with us?
About failure, I had a restaurant and I had my first business at the age of 25. I was 7 months pregnant, working probably 12 hours a day. Passionate, the food was great, everyone loved it, we were doing well. But I had to decide, it was in my life, emotional, physical well-being, or the restaurant, so the restaurant had to come. And I just shut it down.
Okay.
I just shut it down. Holly Wiggins did an amazing speech early and she said there aren't any failures. All we're doing is learning. So everything I learned from the restaurant,
There
I
you
can
go.
run an entire restaurant. I was what, 29. So everything I learned from that, I just took into my next business. So there aren't any failures. You're just.
It's not ever a failure.
You're learning and you're growing and
learning.
you're just getting better.
Love that.
I agree.
Edison said it. I mean, I was looking for.
Did
the
he? What
quote.
did he say? Tell
I
us.
have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways it won't work.
I'll say one silly one, because I was just watching a movie with my kids and like the story they kept, everything they were doing was going wrong. And they were like, we have to just stop. And then the quote, which stuck with me, was like, no, we can never stop failing, because if we stop failing, that means we failed.
Ah,
There you go.
That's a, Rishi just said that's a t-shirt.
Oh, there you go.
Well, will you join me in thanking these great folks? Thanks so much. I wish we could stay here all afternoon. Oh, well.
All right, you, Mary.
Thank you.
It's a callback. I didn't pull that out, yeah. Yeah, so we're here now. Yeah, let me do it.
Thank you.
Trying to get better about doing that.
Hey, nice one for you. Should we be there?
I actually want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like the song from New York City.
Yes, here it is. Yeah, great. I have all.
My partner is like, yeah.